Have you seen this crap? Now I'll get to who I'm really angry at later, but the Tories are basically saying we're racists with their whole chests. The policing bill, you know, the Tories' new law that bans peaceful protest and criminalises gypsies, well, it also increases the police's power to stop and search people, a power that's already used almost 10 times more against black people than white people, according to the government's own figures. And the Tories admit that this will likely disproportionately affect black people, but say that while the vast majority of knife crime convictions are for white people, the disproportionate numbers of convictions for black people make such discrimination objectively justified. So let's cut the bull. Are we saying that melanin, the pigment in my skin that makes it darker, causes people to commit crime? Because if you take this document in the context of the government's recent messaging, that's what it's saying. But I'm going to use the government's own figures to show that they know they're lying. Because the simple version of what I'm saying is, government that just released reports stating that institutional racial discrimination does not exist in the UK, now announces plans to racially discriminate on an institutional level. Sorry, what? So let's break this down. 15% of black people live in the poorest areas of the UK compared to just 9% of white people. And the government's recent race report says, based on experiments done using identical CVs, that black people have to send 65% more job applications than people with white sounding names to get a call back. But they shrugged it off as proof of racism by saying that it might just be because the employer assumes the black candidate is of a lower class. And the government's recent crime plan says we know that getting a job and escaping poverty reduces the likelihood of turning to crime. So what we've got is a government that knows that black people are more likely to be in poverty than white people, knows that discrimination of some kind traps black people in poverty more than white people when it comes to getting a job, knows the links between poverty and inability to escape that poverty and turning to crime. But instead of admitting the problems, we can really grasp the challenge of creating a fair society with both hands, with things like name-blind CVs or having a history curriculum that focuses on more than just the inventions and military victories of white people. They've taken a group that they already stop and search 10 times more than white people and used the higher rates of convictions for those people to knowingly increase the discrimination against them. To say that doing this is objectively justified while denying the existence of systemic racism only makes sense if you're saying that this causes crime. Like I said, they're outing themselves as racists loudly and proudly. But when I saw this story, and I mentally went through all the stuff I just said, I wasn't angry at the Tories. I was angry at the opposition parties. The majority of the votes in the UK have gone to parties to the left of the Tories in all but 3 elections since the Second World War. Yet the Tories have been in power for 2/3 of that time. So we've been getting governments much more intolerant than our actual population for a literal lifetime. But if Labour committed to changing our voting system to one where all votes count equally, and did an electoral pact with the Lib Dems and Greens to make sure that no progressive votes were wasted in a one-off election, then we could change that forever and tackle racism instead of giving it a leg up. The only thing stopping that is party rivalry, because not working together splits the progressive vote and leads to Tory prime ministers, because it has done for most of the last 70 years. So you can't say that it's just about Lib Dem values or Labour values. Not doing this can only be explained by selfish political ambition. What I mean is, when you think about the word racist, we get angry because it means that person is willing to contribute to the discrimination and suffering of ethnic minorities in society for their own selfish gain. Well, if the leaderships of Labour and the Lib Dems don't work together to help us stop having to deal with this white supremacist bullshit, why would I only be angry at the Tories?